glad you could be here with me today, and we can discuss the history and design of the California Common, Common Core State Standards, CCSS. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about them because it's exciting for everybody. So, the first thing to know about the Common Core is not just the history of the dates and the names and who's involved, but really the evolution of the whole movement and what is behind the evolution of that movement. So I'm going to start out with some learning theories. So the first learning theory that we learned about in the class was behaviorism. And behaviorism is really just simplified into stimulus and response. So in a classroom, that looks like the teacher says something, the students are supposed to do it. So we're really thinking more about procedural things and just regular behaviors, regular things that you would want to do. As far as schoolwork is concerned, behaviorism translates into things like writing this spelling word and defining it and doing sentences, etc., etc. So it's really low-level thinking skills. After behaviorism in education, we had some cognitivism learning theories, and cognitivism sought to fix the problems of behaviorism, so working on the same sort of thing, which was observable behaviors, observable evidence to see whether or not students were learning, but not really understanding what happened in the students' minds. Understanding a little bit more, though, that there needed to be something that took the information from short-term memory to long-term memory. So this sort of thing was happening in the United States educational system, and these movements were very big through the beginning of the 20th century. But these were not enough. So what happened was students were really learning a lot of rote knowledge, rote skills, multiplication tables, how to read, how to write, how to do arithmetic. And then the problem came later when they tried to go out into the working world and the real world. So in 1983, the article written "A Nation at Risk" really brought to the attention the problems that were happening. And the problems were that businesses were having to retrain their new hires. So these were kids right out of high school that did not have those basic skills that they needed to get along in the real world. Basic skills not meaning multiplication tables and how to spell, basic skills meaning higher order thinking skills like problem solving, critical thinking skills, and being able to transfer information learned from one thing to another new and more interesting situation. Students didn't know what to do. They also needed remediation in reading and writing. And this is a problem for business. It's also a problem for our students going out and being able to get and retain jobs. So because of this, the cry ran out that there needed to be standards. There needed to be core standards, things that all students should be learning. And there was general agreement and consensus with this. But then what happened was, unfortunately, the federal government decided to step back rather than to step in. They thought that it was not necessarily the federal government's place to tell teachers what to teach and to tell students what they needed to learn. So they decided instead to have a more hands-off approach and let the states take care of it. What happened then was the states' governors got together with business. Now, business had a big stake in the education system because in the end, they were the ones that were going to get the students, and they had to make sure that they had, in essence, an educated person to work with. So business came in and lent a hand. So we had the governments working together with big business. Not terribly without danger, because obviously business is going to have their own bias, but better than nothing at all. So we had IBM working with different governors. We had Apple working with different governors. Today we still have Dell working with different governors, etc. And so through that, we had, in the end, 49 49 different states creating their own sets of standards. Standards meaning that these were practices that students would learn. These were things that they had to learn specifically before they could move on to the next step in their school career. And the governors worked with the businesses, and the businesses came in with the funding. So they did have a little bit of stake at what was taught, but they were also very instrumental in that. Now the next piece is assessment, and this is where the Common Core State Standard happened in 2008, 2009. Do you happen to know offhand?
No, right around there.
Right around there.
2009.
So Common Core State Standard was more of a national movement. That was when the country decided we need to have everybody kind of learning the same thing so that a student could move from one part of the country to another and have a consistent education. Other buzzwords for Common Core are rigor and relevancy and real-world applications. So the rigor means that they wanted to stay away from behaviorism and cognitivism. They wanted to get students to learn more than that rote learning, that knowledge level learning. They wanted to make it much more rigorous. So what we're talking about with the Common Core State Standards is so much more of a constructivism approach. Constructivism theory meaning that students are using their own personalities and personal view on the world, and they are constructing meaning through meaningful activities, performance tasks, and different sorts of things that are much more than multiplication worksheets. They're learning how to figure things out, and they're creating their own sense of meaning. So the great thing is that students are doing all these higher order thinking skills. The problem is the assessment piece. So how do we know when the students have learned them? That's when the new SBAC tests and assessments were assessed or were created, and that's what they were created for. So the new tests are there to make sure that we are assessing the new standards, which in turn, according to Tom Torlakson, are going to encourage teachers to teach the new, more rigorous, more relevant, more real-world setting standards. And so that kind of brings us up to date in where we are now. So now we're at a point in time where hopefully, if all the stars align correctly, we are all working towards teaching all students a consistent approach, and we are teaching constructivist theories, and we are making sure that students are learning those higher order thinking skills, problem solving, critical thinking, transfer, and then we are assessing them in the same sort of way. So the new assessments of SBAC are here to assess the new Common Core State Standards. And if we are successful, then in the end we're going to end up with what Thomas Jefferson wanted back in the 1700s, which was an educated populace. Any questions?
No, that's great.
Okay, thank you.